And welcome back, everyone, to The Wilder Ride, where we are getting wilder by the minute. A podcast that Take two.
Good job.
I'm going to save that for a special show placement. All right.
Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
What in the wide, wide world of sports is going on here? Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
You are listening to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. Here are your hosts, Alan Sanders and Walt Murray.
And welcome back, everyone, to The Wilder Ride, getting wilder by the minute. It's a podcast where we break down and celebrate the films of Gene Wilder 1 minute at a time. Now, we are in the midst of our inaugural season, and the first season is dedicated to reanimating Young Frankenstein. I'm your host, Alan Sanders.
And I, Walt Murray, am your co-host.
And someone who's pretty much used to dealing with things that either come back or go to the dead with all the Indiana Jones legends and lore. We've got Tom Taylor from the Indiana Jones Minute. Welcome back, Tom.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back.
It's great to have you.
I'm alive.
It's crazy because you sound exactly like you do in your podcast.
That's because I'm talking into a microphone about movies.
I keep wondering, is this something I'm listening to in the car, or is this live? Is it live or is it Memorex?
I know, I keep just sitting back and listening like I do when I've got you on.
Yeah, but I'm talking to you, so you need to respond sometimes. I've had the same experience. The first time we had the Star Wars Minute guys on during Raiders, you're like, oh, wait, they're talking. I said something, and now they're responding to me. That's weird. That doesn't normally happen.
See, being in radio, and I know I've told Pete this a lot when we've had some Facebook discussions. Mm-hmm. I'm so used to listening to live radio. I'm in talk radio myself. I do morning radio here, so I'm used to listening to live shows. And when someone says something or adds a comment or does something, usually there's the sense of calling in, say, "Oh, I want to weigh in on that." Right. And I find myself going, "I can't weigh in. That show aired a year ago.
Yeah,
they don't care what I'm thinking right now."
Right.
That's when you just scream at your dashboard or wherever you are. Yeah, well, that's what that's for.
What I found myself, I can't help it. I've tweeted you guys. I've left messages going, "No, wait a minute. Now, just because you guys aren't drinkers, I can explain why what he's serving in the tent. I can explain why that's actually a clear brandy. It doesn't have to be brown. You know,
that's an option that I don't think came up on.
I know it didn't. And I was like, I gotta let these guys know.
See, my response is more what Gene's response is at the end of this minute of grabbing him by the throat and saying, "You idiot!"
So we appreciate you being here with us here on the Wilder Ride. And let me ask you this before we get going into it. I wanted to ask this: how did you guys decide to do the Indiana Jones Minute? What brought that on?
It was actually Pete Mummert's idea, one of my co-hosts. There was a moment when the Star Wars Minute guys on their Patreon show said, hey, if anybody out there wants to do another, Movies by Minutes podcast, this is how you do it. Here's what my spreadsheet looks like, here's what the kind of like a very, very high level kind of gloss over of like, of what the process is or something, and just kind of put the idea out there. And I think Pete was one of the first, 10 or 20 guys who were like, oh, that's a good point. Because like at that point, it was only like Goodfellas Minute and Back to the Future Minute and Star Wars Minute. And yeah, Pete called me and said, hey, you, me, and Jerry should do Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm like, all right. And almost at exactly the same time, I was having the same conversation with my friends Mike and Dan saying, hey, we should do, at the time we were saying we should do a Clockwork Orange Minute. And we're like, nah, there's so many like, we don't want to get strangled like a corpse on a slab because all the Kubrick scholars are going to, know more about it than we do. So let's do something more fun like Caddyshack, which we adore, and we don't have to be experts on it or anything. So, those both sort of happened at the same time. And, and we had a big conversation at one point on the Indiana Jones Minute. Well, maybe we should call it the Indiana Jones Minute, not the Raiders of the Lost Ark Minute, in case we want to go and do the other movies. It'll make more sense.
Good call.
So, that's kind of how it started up, and we're going strong.
Well, I think the first time in my life I ever worried about somebody actually doing violence to me is when I criticized something in A Clockwork Orange. And
that happens.
It is amazing the diehard fans of Kubrick's work, but of A Clockwork Orange. They really get serious about that movie.
Yeah, they're not kidding around. There's no room for simple love or appreciation. You gotta know your facts.
No,
be able to back it up with study in science.
Well, and I know this will come as a shock, but I made a smart comment, and man, this guy was ready to come over the table at me, and I was like, whoa, okay, big fella. It's okay.
Make the comment. This was one of Kubrick's weaker films.
Well, if you're into that sort of thing.
Why did he cast, Malcolm McDowell? He's just terrible in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll get you stabbed.
Instant ratings. It's like clickbait, isn't it?
Well, the good thing is you won't have to worry about that conversation being carried by anybody else other than the angry man in the room who yells at you for the next 2 hours.
There you go.
All right, well, let's get back to what could be a very angry man in this laboratory in a few minutes. We are starting off minute number 48 with CPR being administered to the creature, and it will end with Gene Wilder's character yelling, "You bastard, I'll get you." And we don't get the rest of it. We're going to have to stick around for more than just minute 48, but let's just deal with the facts as we have in front of us right now. I have girls, 2 of my daughters, actually 3 now, have all been lifeguard certified, which means they have to know CPR. I was in the Navy. I had to learn CPR. Has it changed in the 70s when you're trying to resuscitate a body that you use your own hand as a cushion when you're trying to pound the chest? Why is he pounding his own hand between the chest and his fist?
That is weird.
I actually saw that somewhere else. I want to say it was on maybe the 70s show Emergency.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. There was some show that I saw where they were doing CPR, or maybe it was MASH, but it was from that time frame, and they were doing CPR on somebody, and I noticed they were pounding on their own hand, and I've always meant to ask somebody about that. I don't know why, but that is actually a thing, but I don't know.
Well, it's not a thing now, so I was just curious. It must have been... Is that just because of the early 70s and CPR was still new? I mean,
I wonder if it's if it's like a film actory thing or something. Like you're hitting your hand, so you're not actually pounding on the other actor's chest and breaking his sternum or anything. Like if it's that kind of a thing.
It could be.
It's just like a little sleight of hand fakery or something.
Maybe. Although I've got a note here that said that Peter Boyle actually had a protective box underneath his coat here to prevent him from taking a beating. So they assumed that Gene Wilder was going to hit. Maybe Gene just did that as a way to make sure he didn't overdo it. It looks weird to me that he's pounding his own hand to try to start the heart.
It is weird, and I would think that if you're trying to start the heart, that you want as much of the impact on the heart as you can get, and your hand's going to absorb a lot of it.
And he doesn't try to do the typical chest compressions. He's trying to do that, last-ditch effort after chest compressions aren't working of doing the jolt to the heart, and that's not working. So, I mean, it's obviously he's trying to do some kind of resuscitative techniques here. It just, every time I watch this moment, I'm like, it seems odd that you're doing it wrong.
That is very strange.
He's supposed to be a doctor. What's going on?
What is going? Exactly. You're a doctor. You lectured us at the very beginning. You understand all about the body and anatomy and things like that.
And this is now Peter Boyle instead of the mannequin, right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is actually Peter Boyle. I don't know why, because he doesn't do anything. But
it's some great acting.
They only had the dummy up above when they had the lightning arcing onto the body. They didn't want to have the actual Peter Boyle up there. He had an issue with that. It's like 500,000 volts. Can I sit this one out?
You're not paying me enough.
There isn't enough money to do that. I would have to imagine that playing a dead body would have to be a bit of a challenge. I mean, obviously I have no lines to memorize, but not breathing, not flinching, not having your eyes flutter, not trying to scratch your nose. I mean, it has to be a bit of a challenge to just lay there and be a dead body.
I think about that all the time in the kind of television cop shows when they're working on a corpse, and you can tell it's a real actor with makeup to make it look like a real dead body. That, between takes, how long are you holding your breath? What are they doing to try to disguise that this person's really not dead? But even the slightest, because camera catches everything, just the slightest raise of the sheet, you're like, oh, he took a breath.
Yep, took a breath.
Yeah.
No, you don't see Peter Boyle at all. Even when he's being beat on, you don't see anything moving.
He doesn't even flinch. And he gets strangled in the scene. I mean, he does not react at all.
So one of my questions, besides the heartbeat, when he's trying to resuscitate and pound on the chest, he doesn't try to administer any kind of air. He doesn't try to breathe air into his creature. And I'm wondering
about that too. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you have tried that? Because visually, as well as thematically, here's the doctor trying to bring life, right? It's his creation. Yeah. why did they not have a scene, or at least attempt to, provide artificial, air, blowing into his lungs?
The only thing I can think of is Peter Boyle is gigantic, and it would probably be really awkward to try to make that move to get around the metal bracket there and get down there to do that. That's the only thing I could figure.
Yeah, it might be just super awkward to do it just physically, with all the apparatus there and everything, and his head has just been sewn back on. It might just like rip off and
roll
tries to
off
tilt his head or something. But I wonder if just like the pounding on the chest is like enough, like kind of brief shorthand of CPR or something for the scene.
I guess we're just supposed to. I guess we're supposed to take that away. And again, when you're watching it, I don't full speed, not paying attention to the details, you can just let it go. But I even looked to the script to see, was there anything in the script? And actually, even this little bit of CPR was added on set. They didn't have anything about him doing these chest compressions in the script. It says simply that all eyes are on the body as it descends. Freddy, soaked to the skin, places a stethoscope on the creature's heart and listens, yells nothing. Inga says, "Oh, doctor," and he says, "Crushed, no, be of good cheer." They have none of the resuscitative techniques in the script.
That's interesting. Well, but I think that the resuscitation is great because it shows his desperation to make this happen. That he wants this monster to live so bad.
I actually have a note about his performance that we're about to see here coming up. This is actually film critic Pauline Kael wrote of the time of Gene Wilder, saying that hysteria is Gene Wilder's dazzling specialty. It seems perfectly natural for him. His fits are lucid and total. They take him in a different dimension. He delivers what Harpo Marx promised.
Oh, interesting. That's funny.
I think that's a great way of explaining, because Jim Carrey doing this, you're like, okay, it's your typical over-actor. It's Jim Carrey.
Sit down. Yeah.
But Gene Wilder does it, and you're like, well, he's so into it, and he cares, and and I'm going to let him do it. And I'm going to believe him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and two, you mix in the crazy hair. I mean, his hair has gone completely bonkers at this point. Yeah. It really is a mastercraft of his.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I'm just thinking right now, he doesn't really have any scene like this in Blazing Saddles, does he? He's very kind of cool and calm in that movie.
Yeah, he does not have anywhere he goes crazy. Not at all.
Because, in the Producers, he goes bananas. And then in that, he really doesn't. And then they come back to it for this. It's interesting. I mean, it's nice that, it is like maybe his specialty, just going berserk like this. But he can still carry a whole movie in Blazing Saddles without going to that. That's cool.
I was watching some scenes from Stir Crazy over the weekend as well.
Yeah.
And even though he is intense and emotional, you don't have a scene like this that I can remember from that movie.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
I think the closest that I saw, obviously, the Producers, which was a little while before this, I think 68, but 71, when he played Willy Wonka for Mel Stewart, he had a couple of moments, but it never rose to the intensity that we have in Young Frankenstein.
No, this is like
lifting frame.
Right. That's going to have to be cleaned and sterilized. You get nothing, sir. I love that
but this
scene.
is like a complete psychotic break.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
which is why, I'm wondering if, I think part of the reason I thought of Blazing Saddles was, were audiences geared to this already from him? Like, were they almost expecting, a minute ago you just saw it, when he's up in the rafters, like he's going berserk, give my creation life and everything. I'm just thinking about, the whole, quiet dignity and grace speech that he gives here is so obviously a build-up to him going bananas. But it works fine because you're sort of waiting for it and you know it's going to happen, and it's you're expecting it and you want it. So in another movie, this might be okay, we get it. Quiet dignity and grace. There's no way he's not going to go berserk. You can almost groan from the setup. But here, because it's Gene Wilder and because it's Mel Brooks, you kind of know what you're about to get, and so you're sort of enjoying the ride of the obvious buildup to the insanity.
Now, we're back in the scene here with our Igor character coming onto the other side. We see our trio. I think this is one of those things which just it always is funny to me when you are doing a double of anything, like an Airplane when he takes his glasses off and he's still got glasses on. Or later we've got Kenneth Mars with the eye patch, but he's got a monocle over the eye patch. We've got Igor wearing his rain slicker over his his henchman, outfit. He's got the hood still up.
Yeah. And then he reverently removes it and takes it off during that speech. Gosh, he is just so funny. And I've been watching him through this scene. He is glued to Frederick as he's making that speech. He is just hanging on his every word.
I've said
this. Even before that, when he's doing like the CPR and listening with the stethoscope, he kind of leans in like he's going to hear something too.
He does this so much throughout the film. And Walt, this is probably like the 8th time now I'm going to say this. Sometimes when I'm going through these minutes, I forget to watch what else is happening because I keep watching Marty Feldman the whole minute to see, because he has got nothing to say, and yet he is actively doing something to hold our attention.
A couple times when I was preparing for this, I actually watched him just through the whole minute to see what he did. And he is such a integral part of this movie without stealing the scene, but he contributes to the scene constantly.
Well, and if you even watch his facial expressions, when the doctor is pounding, he winces like with each one, and then as soon as he stops, his eyes go super wide. Like, did it work?
Yeah,
he's just so into the moment.
He really is, and you still have to laugh because of that ridiculous rain slicker and rain hat that he's wearing.
What I love, and we've mentioned this before, but Tom, we think that actually Marty Feldman is channeling a dog as part of his character because of the way he acts. He's always easily distracted. His head's always swooping from one side to the other. He never walks in a straight line anywhere. He's just like a dog.
That's hysterical.
I guess
that works.
He's the doctor's best friend, huh?
Well, and then it was interesting here how they all three turn in unison to start to walk away.
Oh, when he gives this speech about, no.
Yeah.
Science, if science teaches us anything, it teaches us to accept our failures as well as our successes with quiet dignity and grace. And they all do that very slow, almost church-like, graceful turn to go away.
Right.
It's so choreographed, and yet it works.
It works perfect. And then
totally.
Gene, of course, breaks.
Right.
Yeah.
Frederick breaks.
Frederick.
They're almost interchangeable at this point.
Yeah, he's on the brink. Yeah,
he is on the brink.
I guess that's what I mean. Like the whole even though the speech is such an obvious setup to that break, it is almost like just like the kind of quiet before a huge storm or something. Like you kind of need that pause of quiet dignity and grace before he just absolutely loses it and goes crazy at bonkers.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we sort of segued to or went off topic for a little bit last minute yesterday about movies today, giving us that time to sort of like be apprehensive or to give us that break or to like let us get that sense of, okay, what's coming next? What's coming next? You have that.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, at this point in the movie, we realize there's always the possibility of something coming at us that we're not expecting.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, what I like about what this scene is doing, because if it was a modern film today, his going bananas on the creature would have what brought him back to life. But we're not going to see that, and we're going to talk about that next minute, because that's what I was like, oh, okay. So, in all the movies, even like in The Abyss, right? He's, Ed Harris is trying to bring, what's her name? Mary
Elizabeth Mastrantonio.
Mastrantonio, yes, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. When he's trying to bring her to life and he's doing all the CPR and everything, and he realized, okay, we got to give up. The guy kind of puts the shirt back. His little helper over there, the bearded guy, kind of puts the shirt back, saying, let's let her have some modesty. And then Ed, no, fight, starts slapping her. And then, that apparently was what brings you back to life. You just slap somebody enough across the face. And so I was expecting this to be that case, and it's not.
That's funny. I was thinking, the whole like strangling of him and everything would just go on even longer in a movie today, or like more stuff would happen, like parts would fall off him or something, or just more sparks and mayhem. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, explosions.
Yeah.
No, and again, they really nail it because they got just the right drama. They got just the right, emotional interaction. They really did a masterful job of putting this together. And again, without any CGI or anything like that, they timed everything perfectly. And it's a great kind of beginning to wrap up of this tremendous scene that's run for the last 7 or 8 minutes. Yeah,
what we're going to get here at the very end is our first true back to comedy for a moment, because we'd been serious for a while. The last comedic bit was probably 4 minutes ago when Igor was up in the tower and then suddenly shows up down below.
Right.
And then ever since that point, it's gotten pretty much back to, hey, we're making a monster picture here.
Yeah, and you've had really the pivotal scene of the movie. It's a intense scene, both visually and emotionally, an intense scene, and then you get that curveball from Igor.
Since there's not a lot more going on here, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the creature makeup for a moment, because we mentioned this last week with BK on the air, but I didn't know this until I just did some show prep for today. Peter Boyle's creature makeup was actually a bit of a departure, as we know, from your typical Boris Karloff Frankenstein, especially because of that flat, iconic head. I didn't realize this. The reason they couldn't do it, that image of the flat head is licensed to Universal until the year 2026.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yes. No one is allowed, without paying a royalty to Universal, or even getting permission from Universal, for at least till 2026, that image of the flat-headed Frankenstein's monster cannot be used. So they had to use Peter Boyle's, what he described as himself as, God saw fit to take all my hair away at the age of 24. So
that is interesting.
Fascinating.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think if they had the flat-headed monster, I don't know that it might not have taken away a little bit from this movie. Because it is so believable, and Peter Boyle is just a normal guy who got executed and buried in the ground, and they dug him up and brought him in, and he becomes this the focus of the reanimation. That, I don't know, it might have been a little distracting to have that flat head.
I actually like the idea that our version of the mad scientist here in this particular telling, he's not kludging together body parts. That they chose to say, let's find just one large person and get rid of all the extraneous, well, we got to get the right size arm and the right size leg and the right size Schwanzstücker, I mean.
Yeah. Well,
right.
And in the
and I don't want that job, by the way. I don't want to get doling out the parts. Okay, Walt, you go get left arm, right arm, and the forehead. Yeah. And Inga, you get the left leg, right leg, and I'm going to get the Wait, how did I get the Schwanzstücker? I don't want to get the Schwanzstücker.
I quit.
Inspected by 32.
Welcome to Jamaica.
Well, you got a brain store. We've got a head shop. We wonder if we have a Schwanzstücker emporium
where do you
somewhere.
go in Transylvania to get those body parts? Because Tom, one of the things we've decided, Transylvania is an odd place because they have brain depositories. They have places that obviously sell henchman clothing, and they have places where you can get 3-year-old dead heads and 2-year-old dead heads. So maybe they do. Maybe they do have the body parts store.
They do seem very on top of that, very categorized and very organized. Yeah. So
like aisle 4 is left legs, aisle 5 is right legs.
You got like a giant box store. Body parts are us.
But nobody has an appendix because it doesn't really do anything anyway.
Nobody needs one anyway. No, you need your. I guess you don't. But if it blows, it's bad.
It's bad.
It could be bad for you.
So don't put it in the first place when you're making a new guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Tom, let me ask you this as we're making our way through the final bits of this minute. How does the classic Frankenstein movies, you've got the Frankenstein with Boris Karloff and, the other iterations that Universal put out. We have Son of Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and Ghost of Frankenstein. Were any of those movies you grew up watching on reruns or on television? Or is it a movie you knew what it was, but you never stopped to watch it?
Yeah, I think it's mostly still that, actually. I mean, I've seen Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. But yeah, for the most part, like that, and those were, I didn't see those for years and years and years. I think it was mostly, like you say, just you recognize the flat-headed guy with the bolts in his neck. You know what the deal is. I probably knew him more from parodies and things like this and cartoons and stuff than from the actual movies.
Yeah, I was the same way. Even going into this project, I was thinking more of Herman Munster and the Munsters is where I saw Frankenstein more than anything else.
Yeah, and that's, I think, as I was growing up, through the 70s and 80s, you did have kind of that bolt through the neck, arms straight out, flat head, kind of bowl cut, I guess, kind of haircut. And that was Frankenstein until I saw this, and it kind of changed my view just a little bit.
And I appreciate Universal wanting to hang onto their trademark, but I've never understood why his monster had a flat head. I mean, did he need a place to put his beer?
Yeah. I never really
Was that
thought
like,
but yeah,
was
I
it-
guess that's it.
It was like trying to illustrate that like his head had been opened up and a brain put in and then closed up again or something in some weird way.
See,
Like, aren't there stitches around the top too? I'm not sure. I can't picture it right
I just
now.
don't I've never understood it, because if you crack open someone's skull to shove in a brain and you sew that skull back up, even if you said, okay, well, I need a brain twice as big as the brain that was in here, don't you
Yeah.
just have to find still a skull cap that fits over top? I mean, the brain's round. It's not
Yeah.
square.
Yeah.
We're not playing an 8-bit, Atari 2600 video game. It's not like, if the
Right.
guys from Outlaw were in this movie, that'd be one thing, with the little squared hats. But I mean,
Yeah,
I
right.
never understood the flat head, and then they're so protective of it.
I know, and
Yeah.
and it is iconic,
Well, there's definitely iconic. There's no doubt about it.
but it is kind of an odd
It's strange, such
obsession they
credulity
have
for
with
me.
it. Yeah, a strange credulity, exactly.
Because I'm okay, once again, with bringing a body back to life. That's okay. That's part of the story. But
No,
why
that
is
makes
his head
total sense.
flat? It makes total sense. All right. Well, as we begin to wind down this minute, we are getting back to some more of the comedic element, as the doctor is going bananas on a lifeless corpse, which I think is interesting. His choice to strangle somebody who's already dead. Tom, do you have anything more with this minute that we forgot to look at?
I don't think so. I think we kind of nailed it. I like that we were talking about Marty Feldman, because I realized that when they first, this is a stupid aside, but when they first announced that they were making a movie out of the Stephen King story, The Body, and they're making Stand By Me, I heard that Corey Feldman was going to be in it. I said, Marty Feldman? I can't picture that at all. What is he even, how's he going to fit into that? What? There's no role for, he's not a kid.
Yeah,
I
that
think
would have
he's
been
dead
a
by now,
weird
too. I'm
casting
confused.
decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was already dead, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are they doing?
Turns
with
out I
Marty
was
Feldman?
wrong.
Yeah.
It was an entirely different person.
Woo! Dodge that bullet.
Yeah, that is.
A side note here that I had that we didn't talk about. I think we mentioned it a few minutes, when I say a few minutes, probably weeks ago with Sean German when he was on, that this is how movies were made differently then than I think they are made now. That Gene Wilder, who was kind of working on this idea for Young Frankenstein, his agent called and said, hey, I've got now, besides you, I've got Peter Boyle and Marty Feldman, and I want to do a picture with all three of you. You got any ideas? And Gene Wilder just happened to say, well, funny, I am working on something, but, and I'm bringing this back up because we've got all three of these characters right here in this scene along with Terry Garr, but it was the agent who had just picked up Peter Boyle and already had Gene Wilder and Marty Feldman, and he's like, I want to do a picture, and I want all three of you in that picture. You got any ideas? I'm like, is that how movies got done in the 70s?
Well,
I
it
think
was
so.
perfect casting. That's a crazy mix that they would come together like that.
And I'm not sure why
Yeah.
he's talking like that. Like, what's his name's character from Saturday Night Live? Give
Oh-
me a
oh, no.
C. A bouncy C.
You nailed it.
bouncy C.
Yeah. No, the 70s agent. You nailed him perfectly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how, it's a funny story that I think, here's a movie being pitched, not because Gene Wilder initially had the idea, it's because his agent said, I want to do a picture with three of you guys. You got any ideas?
A crazy guy, a big guy, and a small guy.
Yeah.
Some sort of physical thing.
Frankenstein.
So
works
three guys
perfect.
walk into a bar. All right, well, that's kind of the only side note I had, is just reminding us of this story, that this film, even though Gene Wilder had initially written, and he actually started on the top of the page, he said Young Frankenstein. That's his very first thing he wrote on the legal pad, and then started to write out a couple of pages of notes before Mel Brooks even noticed, and he goes, oh, Young Frankenstein, it's an interesting title. And next thing you know, they're collaborating on it. I just found it interesting that the whole idea of this film, and then the collaboration, the writing, and everything we're talking about started off, the green light was already kind of given ahead of time because the agent was really desperate to have all three of these guys work together in a film.
Well, and they've got great chemistry. And so that was a really good call on his part
Oh, yeah.
to put those three together.
Oh, yeah.
Walt, anything else you got?
Well, we talked a little bit last week about Peter Boyle, and I did a little research over the weekend on Peter Boyle, and he was a prolific actor, and one of the things that I had not really caught before, his character on Everybody Loves Raymond, ironically was named Frank. I had forgotten that that was his character name. And
right.
I was like, well, that's kind of a funny coincidence.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that. Just the coincidence of name.
Yeah.
The crotchety, mean, lumbering.
Yeah. Lumbering, big,
yeah.
mean, nasty dad. Yeah, and he was in another movie of mine that y'all may or may not have ever heard of called Fist with Sylvester Stallone. If you ever get the chance to go watch that movie, it is a really good movie. It came after the original Rocky, and Sylvester Stallone was a union boss. And
I have vague recollections of what you're describing. I can't picture the movie right now.
Movie has just never. I don't even know if you could find it streaming somewhere. You probably have to rent it or buy it. But really good movie, well made, pretty good story. Sylvester Stallone does a great job. Just as kind of a guy who's, I don't know, like a welder or some, real working class guy moves up through the union, and Peter Boyle has a great part in that movie.
Does he play like the heavy?
He's
union boss or something?
Yeah, he's kind of one of the,
the guy you're supposed to hate.
Strong arm kind of guys. Yeah. And then he was in Taxi Driver. He was in Red Heat with Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you ever get a chance to see that. He had a part on one of the episodes or a couple of episodes of the X-Files. He played a great part in NYPD Blue. He played the father of a special needs kid, and it was a very softer side of him, very emotional arc there. He also, his character Frank from Everybody Loves Raymond had a couple of crossovers on Cosby, which I didn't have any recollection of that. I guess I wasn't watching Cosby at that point, but also on The King of Queens.
Oh,
so which makes sense. But
so was he playing like the same character as it when you say crossover?
Yeah, he was playing Frank Barone.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, and just had kind of a one episode hit where he was on for just a minute.
So this is where my lack of knowing all the sitcoms. Having 4 kids, I just haven't had a chance to get all caught up on my sitcom crossovers.
I did remember that crossover.
I got my comic book crossovers down, but not.
Yeah, right. You got the important ones down. And then the final thing is, he was in the movie Where the Buffalo Roam.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, another person that was in Where the Buffalo Roam was Danny Goldman.
Oh, Brainy Smurf.
Brainy Smurf. Yeah, from the
oh, my God.
The medical, yeah.
So he played
Goldman
the med student,
was
questioning.
the obnoxious med student in this movie, and he was Brainy Smurf, the voice of Brainy Smurf.
Oh, wow.
But Where the Buffalo Roam was a Bill Murray movie about kind of the exploits of Hunter S. Thompson. So kind of an interesting movie. I have a love-hate relationship with it. I don't like it, and I do like it.
Right.
I like Bill Murray a lot in that movie, but Hunter S. Thompson.
It's cool that it exists. Whether it's a good movie or not, it's...
Yeah, and I will probably be debating in my mind for the rest of my life whether it's a good movie or not. So,
well, look at the subject matter. It's Hunter S. Thompson.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Fear and Loathing, right?
So, yes.
Yeah.
So, anyway,
you left one movie out that the first time I ever was introduced to the actor Peter Boyle was in the movie Outland with Sean Connery.
That's right.
Oh, of course.
I almost mentioned that. And 2 great.
Oh, I love Outland. I think Outland is one of those underrated movies and I think you can make the argument, the guys with BK on the Air said as well. And Tom, this is a great question to bring back to your Alien Minute friends. Is Outland in the Alien universe? Because they used a lot of the same props to make the movie. And I think there's a couple of Easter eggs somewhere where you kind of see the name of the corporation from Alien somewhere in the background somewhere. And they're like, oh yeah, Outland is in the Alien universe.
I want to say that they actually brought that up on Alien Minute, maybe, because I've heard that before, that theory, and I think it may have been on their show.
When you look, if you go watch the first Alien and then immediately go watch Outland, you could say, okay, it's what are we doing now with Star Wars and everything? It's not a continuation, but it's a side story.
Yeah,
in the same universe.
Yeah.
An alien story,
and it's a good movie. Yeah, it's an alien story, right? Yeah.
All right. Well, that's all I've got. Walt?
That's all I got. And but Peter Boyle,
it's worth looking at his body of work
It is.
To go back if you haven't seen a lot of the films you just mentioned, because he is a very talented actor.
Very talented actor.
Totally.
And you see that he has a wide range. Very.
He commented that he always played the heavy, and he said it came across naturally, even though he was much more liberal in his politics and his beliefs, and he always had that kind of that the emotional side of making some arguments, but he said he always got cast as that blue-collar, heavy, kind of conservative guy, and he said, I was just good doing it, so, what the heck, I'll play it.
Yeah, and it was funny when they cast him on Everybody Loves Raymond, I was like, is he really the guy that they're going to have as his dad?
Oh, he was fantastic.
But it was perfect. I mean, and for
that
guys
show.
Who, if
that was my dad, by the way. That was my dad.
Kind of a curmudgeon. And,
the lovable curmudgeon, right.
Yeah.
But don't laugh in front of him.
Oh, yeah, right.
Only when he turns his back. All right. Well, we don't want anybody turning their backs on any of us here or any of our podcasts. Where can people go to find more of Tom Taylor?
You can find me in a number of places. You can find me at indianajonesminute.com for the Indiana Jones Minute, obviously. That's why we picked that URL, because it makes perfect literal sense. You can also find me at, I think I said it wrong last time, Movie Hole Minute Podcast. No, wait a minute, I did it wrong again. Movie Hole Podcast.
Say it!
For
say
the movie
it!
hole.
Say it! Say it!
MovieHolePodcast.com, where you can find all of the Caddyshack Minute episodes, and we did a brief run of A Christmas Story over the holidays, and we are gearing up, or maybe already having started, The Blues Brothers. So check us out over there. And I'm also part of ABC Devo, which you can find at abcdevo.com, where Pete the Retailer from Star Wars Minute and John Engel from Alien Minute and our friend Joe Maisel go through the entire Devo catalog alphabetically, and that is a lot of fun.
I'm going to have to tune into that. That's just got to be a lot of fun, like you said. Walt, if somebody, and I'm going to take away your www, you don't need to do that. If somebody wants to find us, where do they go?
HTTP.
God dang it.
Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/The Wilder Ride. You can also find us on thewilderride.com. Those are probably the two best places, and then from there you can find our Patreon page, find our Twitter account, find all kinds of other fun places to interact with us.
And of course, depending where you listen, we're pretty much everywhere your podcasts exist, so whatever podcatcher you use, you can also do a quick search for The Wilder Ride, subscribe, and get all the episodes, and get all caught up. If you just stumbled across this right now, you're a fan of Tom Taylor's, and you're like, well, I don't want to listen to the whole thing, I'm just going to listen to his week. Well, go on back, catch up from episode 1, and see how far we've come.
And if you like what you're hearing, please go out to iTunes, find us there, give us a 5-star rating if you do like what you're hearing, and make a quick comment so your vote gets counted and so people can find us when they're looking for us.
We would absolutely love that. Well, come on back tomorrow. Tom, do you mind hanging out with us for a couple more days?
I insist.
Okay, good, because I'm
not going anywhere.
I've got, some classic movies downstairs. We got a couple of sleeping bags unrolled. I've got the D&D board out just in case we want to get really throwback. But if we have time tomorrow, what I want to do is continue the assault on the dead body by Dr. Frankenstein to his creature. And we actually will end minute 49 tomorrow at an angry town hall meeting. Apparently, the appearance of the young Dr. Frankenstein in Transylvania is causing a stirring in the homeowners association. So with that said, till tomorrow.
Frankenstein.
Is he now Frankenstein?
We don't have any clue at this point. He's just off the rails.
He's like, you bastard, I'll kill you for this. Oh, wait, that's a Marion line.
What did you do to me?
That's a Marion.
You're crossing your universes here.